Good evening, everybody. This is Discussion Point. Welcome, Cynthia, first of all. Before I even introduce you properly, I should have actually taken you out there just a second, but I was just doing some bits and pieces in the background. Now, I just wanted to say to everybody, there's a little problem going out to my Facebook HPQ link. So if you've got people that are watching, tell them to go to my Discussion Point Facebook link or my YouTube Facebook, on my YouTube link actually, to tune in to Discussion Point. So if you've got time to do that, Cynthia, just to send out a message, and I'll put that in the chat also if anyone's tuning in live. Are you with me, Cynthia?
I certainly am. Good evening, Alison.
Good evening, Cynthia. How are you, my darling? How are
I'm,
you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm great.
Good. Well, just to give you a proper introduction, first of all, this is Discussion Point, and this particular show is all about funeral services and what to do in funeral directing, what happens if you die, what happens if you don't have any money, all the questions and more that people may want to ask or find out or answer. And I've got Cynthia here from Memories Matters Funeral Services. She's a funeral director for her own company, and she's here to just to talk about some of her work in terms of funeral servicing and some of the questions that we may want to ask. So thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Cynthia.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity because I
That's
do.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, Alison.
That's okay. So first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, Cynthia? Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit more about Memories Matter Funeral Services.
Okay. Right. I'd like to introduce my name is Cynthia, and I thank everybody that's come onto this forum today, this discussion. Um, I've launched a business called Memories That Matters. Okay, and this was launched in 2013-14. I have always been in the funeral industry for the best part of probably 25 years. I first started off with a company called Cooperative Funeral Services. I know many probably know who they are. Their branches is worldwide in the UK. And I was a funeral arranger there. I covered many, many branches in London. And what I actually faced, which gave me the opportunity to launch this business, was meeting all different walks of life with all different situations. And the situation that I came across, which really touched me, was families that was struggling to meet funeral costs. You know, the disadvantages in them knowing where to find the funding and how they're going to do a funeral service that really mirrored their loved ones.
Yeah.
So that was something that really brought to my attention, especially when you're doing funeral arrangements and you tell them the cost and you can actually physically see it on their face and think, gosh, where am I going to get that from? So I took that opportunity and I took it away and I kind of thought about it for quite a long time. And I did a lot of research because there's so much out there that people that can give, people can do discounts and so forth. And this is the reason why I decided to launch this company for disadvantaged families. But then obviously I do it for other people because some people they have got their life in order, should I say, and got their life plans, savings, and that and amongst kind of families that is kind of financially okay, So, but there was a lot that wasn't. So that's the reason why I launched my Funeral Memories Matters.
Okay. So to hold it right there for a second. So I understand why you launched Memories Matters, but what about yourself in terms of, how you actually got into funeral directing?
Well, the funeral director, actually, I was actually thrown in the deep end because I used to work for a company, an organisation called Richard House Children's Hospice. And my children were quite small, so I kind of worked part-time there. And within the hospice when I joined it, it was just growing. They were building the hospice and so forth. So they were in communication with different funeral directors.
Yeah.
And one particular man called Stan, yeah, he came in and we got chatting, and I got to know him very well. And he said to me, "What would you think of being a funeral arranger?" But I didn't know which company he was from at that time. So I thought, oh, okay. And then he
Yeah.
told me it was Cooperative Funeral Services. And the reason why I emphasize the actual company, because they are the company who officiated my mother's funeral. And
Oh.
he wanted me to go into the same branch that where I viewed my mother. So, like I am, Capricorn, I take a risk. I did it. I did it, and when I got into it, I was actually thrown in the deep end because it was just like we had a flu. There was a flu pandemic, and I literally froze, and it was like doing one task from another. So I fell into it really quickly, and I met some wonderful families. Really, I'm a people person, so I can talk, and just to reassure them that it's going to be okay. It's going to be
Yeah.
okay. We're here to guide you and so forth. So that's how it all started, and I was there for quite a long time. But I did leave there, and the reason I left it because I was doing a lot of people that I knew. It could be my friend's
Yeah.
mother, father, children. I dealt with stillborn deaths. I dealt with children of my own children's age deaths. So I did live there for a short time, and then I went to somewhere that was really noisy because I was used to
Okay.
being quiet.
We'll come into shortly what it's like and your experience as a funeral director and dealing with certain deaths, such as young children, because that must be really, really difficult. But I'll cover that little bit later on. But what does it actually entail? Sort of like being a funeral director, exactly. What's your day to day? I mean, I can talk about the day to day of my job. What's the day to day of your job? Do you have do you have a schedule of people saying, somebody's died, we want your services, please come and collect, or does it just turn up? What paperwork? What does it actually entail?
Well, it is a day-to-day thing, and that's what actually happens. We get a phone call, and we have to collect the people's loved ones from whether it be the hospital, from their homes. It can be traumatic, with murder victims, suicide. So we actually take them to our head office, and there where it's decided that whether it's that they died at home, and if they didn't die at home, if they died in the hospital, should I say, and if they died elsewhere. And it is kind of complex, really, because in a hospital, when you pass away, the doctors already know what you're in there for. And so it can easily be confirmed of the cause of death. If they not died at home and they died at home, or they died on the road, or it's been some trauma accidents or anything like that, then a coroners are involved. Then it is a process that we have to liaise with coroners, and then they would actually let us know the cause of death. Then they obviously release the bodies. If it's a hospital, it's all the certificates are all done, and where we will collect, and then we will bring them to the funeral home, and that's when I initiate the first meeting and to arrange a funeral. And so
Wow.
to arrange a funeral, obviously.
Let me just stop you there. We're gonna get we're gonna get into arranging the funerals in a second, but there's obviously a whole process of things, because as far as I'm concerned, if I pass away, you just think, the hospital will let, I don't know, the hospital will let you know. I know that by legality, you have to have a death certificate. And once you get the death certificate, I think then is that when you can go. Can you go about the funeral arrangements before you get the death certificate, or do you have to get the death certificate beforehand? And what happens? And obviously, we had coronavirus. What happens when people were dying during coronavirus and they obviously couldn't go and register for a death certificate? Was this then done online? And was there a backlog? And did this cause an issue? I know I've got like 5 questions in there for you.
Yeah. Well, just to address your first question, yes, they have to register the death. And the death is registered within the borough of where the person died. And that's how they do it, okay? So they collect the hospital certificate or a coroner's certificate, and that is then given to the registrars. Now, it is done online now. It never used to be prior to the pandemic. It used to be done online. So it makes it a little bit more easier for the families and the funeral directors because everything's done online. So therefore, what actually happens now is that the registrars will forward the certificate to the funeral directors and post what they need to post, another certificate for what the family requires to themselves. So it's easy for us to go through it. But during the pandemic, it took weeks because there was such a backlog, you know.
I was going to say, do you know if there's a time from when someone dies to when you have to log the birth certificate to when they have to be buried, or is it down to your own process between getting the death certificate to when you bury them? I'm trying to work out a couple of points.
Yeah, they do require that you have to register them as soon as you've actually picked up the hospital certificate. You have to register them because then there's all sorts of services that come into it. Is there banks, the DWP, you know, whether they're in social housing, the mortgage, all these people has to be notified. So everything's closed.
So the hospital give a certificate, and then you take that and you get the death certificate.
That's correct.
Okay. So if they die at home, what happens?
If they die at home, they're taken to a coroner's, which a post-mortem is taking place to determine what the cause of death is.
And then they issue the certificate there, then you get
the certificate then.
Okay, now I get that. Sorry, yeah, there's so much process. So okay, so you've then got the hospital certification, you've then got the death certificate, you then is there a translation between the death certificate to the funeral home, or is that something that you have to do manually?
Well, what normally happens right now that they would actually send it to the funeral home. So when they when they do ask you who is officiating the funeral, then they take down their details, and all registrars know of the funeral directors within the borough, and they will actually email it to them.
Okay, so it's now emailed. Okay, so what actually happened during the pandemic? Because obviously there's some time difference. There's some timings for when deaths have to be certified and certificates given out. I mean, were there some serious delays before people could certify the death to when they were buried?
Yes, there was, because the process with the hospital sent it over and the coroner sending it over to the registrars. There was taking weeks. It was taking like a couple of months to get the certificate from them, and then it will be passed over to the funeral directors. Now the funeral directors are able to do the funeral, but the waiting time of burial and cremation was like 2 months, could be more.
Wow. That is actually a long time for people to wait, but I think people could appreciate the situation that we were in. It was unprecedented. You know, no one's seen anything like it, for the whole world to kind of shut down for quite a number of months, and so systems had to clunk into place and work. And whereas everything had been manual, and we know that some government institutions like births, marriages and deaths, I don't know about now. I had my son such a long time ago. I don't know if it's all digitalized now, but I certainly know there's still a lot of formalities going up to somewhere. And I like passports. I had an interview with the minister of oh gosh, I've forgotten where it was now, but he was talking about passports and applications, and that it all had to go online, and that people were no longer coming to the actual embassy. And I'm sure this is obviously the same, which is what was happening with births and obviously deaths.
That's correct.
And I'm hoping that they will keep this system, because not everyone can rock up to somewhere now, and we are in a digitalized era. And
Yes.
things should be now online. So it's probably a good thing, right? And
yes,
hopefully that it's all smoothing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has made it easier. I'll be honest with you, Alison, it has made it easier for families and the funeral directors, because like you just said, that the families physically would have to go to the hospital to collect a certificate with the cause of death. Then they would have to make an appointment with the registrars to register the death. So, and that could be days, and then, but funeral directors can make initial plans to what they want and so forth, but they cannot go ahead and give them a time or day.
Okay. So I'm going to come back into the costs of funerals and the types of things, but I want to get into the process of what happens to a body once it reaches a funeral home, right? So you've now got your deceased person. What's the stages of what happens to that person in the funeral home up until when they're buried? I mean, I know there's processes such as embalming and things like that, which, you need to take out all their normal bodily fluids and replace it with whatever to try and preserve the body in a state where it can be viewed and so forth. What are all the steps that lead up to before the burial in terms of that person?
Well, you're absolutely correct, Alison. They're brought to the funeral home and they are embalmed, okay? And they're embalmed for two reasons. One, for preservation and free from infection. And this is done just to protect ourselves and the families. So if they wish to view their loved one, they're able to do so. There's some families that will take longer than others. There's some families that want to see them straight away. And then during this period, we would actually do the first meeting in finding out what kind of funeral they want. Then we go through coffin and so forth. So, and we also will actually give them opportunity to see whether they want their loved one to be dressed. Okay, so once they given that, and they bring the clothes, they're dressed. And they're placed in the coffin, ready for viewing, and then being prepared for the day of the funeral.
And so in terms of getting them dressed and everything, is that something that the relatives get involved in, or is that something that you do, like makeup and things like that?
Yes, I do.
When does that process kick in, and when do you invite relatives to come and do that? Do they request it? Do you tell them when they can come in?
Yes, we do. Normally, once we prepare their loved one, they do see their relative 2 days prior to the funeral. So they're given 2 days prior to the funeral. We can be flexible with that. So if they require it sooner, then we can do that, most definitely.
Okay, and that's where they come in and they provide the dressing and whatever they want to bury with the body and makeup and so forth.
Yes. And also, like you said, yes, I do makeup. They specifically ask for nail varnish to actually put the makeup they actually use. So what I normally do is I will ask a picture from them, a picture of them, to make the makeup identical. Yeah.
Is there? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Is there any special makeup that you need to use, or can you just use ordinary makeup?
Use ordinary makeup. Ordinary makeup. It's just how you do it. because the skin texture is different.
Completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you got put on lipstick, and with us ladies that we're able to be really precise to how we do it, so it's like doing a painting with the lipstick.
Yeah.
I very much take my time in doing that.
So what's it like dealing with, I mean, I've always lived near cemeteries, you know, all my life. And at first I was like, oh my God, I'm living next to a cemetery. And my mother always said, it's the living you need to be afraid of, not the dead. And, that's resonated with me all the time. And I feel a sense of peace whenever I'm walking through a cemetery and reading all the inscriptions and seeing the ages of people that have died, and the wordings that people have actually put upon them as well. I mean, how do you feel about dealing with the deceased day to day? I mean, for you, it might be a normal job, and for some people, that's quite difficult. But how do you deal with it?
Well, I'll be honest with you, when I very first started, I was actually frightened. Yeah, it's like, please don't leave me alone in here. So, but the more and more I was into it, it became normal. I'm not, there's nothing to be afraid of. So, and a lot of people do ask me that question, but I just find it normal. And I know probably people thinking, how can you find that normal? But I do. I do. Yeah. My focus is on the families, and I need to do what they want, and making sure I give it my best. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all about that, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, just wheeling a little bit back a little bit and being a funeral director, is there a formal process to become one? Is there like a qualification, or is it all about experience and time in this sort of work field?
You'll find there's no such qualification. It's only if you want to set up something yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when I very first started, I didn't have no qualification. Initially, as being a funeral arranger. Yeah. So I was trained, to do this. So, and because I retained information quite well, that it became very straightforward for me.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the other thing I want to speak about is that you are a Black funeral director. We know an awful lot of Black people have funerals, I should say, and love the celebration of funerals.
Yeah.
Um, is there a market for Black funeral directors? Do you know of many Black funeral directors?
I do know a few, actually. I do know a few. I have approached a few. Yeah, it was at my very beginning stage of what I wanted to do, because I just felt that when I went into it, I wanted to be in an organisation which was solely, Black people, but they didn't want that.
So, but what I'm trying to say is that is there a lot of Black funeral directors? I mean, is it predominantly the white funeral directors that are directing Black funerals, or are there an army of Black funeral directors that we don't know about?
Well, no, there is Black funeral directors. I feel that they're far few between. You probably might find them in Hackney or South London, or North London, should I say, and South London. You find quite a few there, and I've been there and I've observed how they do things, and I really do think that customer service and your approach to families is so important. Yeah, you need them to feel at ease. You need to make them feel, but that's my own perception. I think I have a company that works with me called TC Cripps, and they are a white company, and I sing their praises all day long. They do Afro-Caribbean funerals. They've even got funeral directors in Ghana, so and they do very, very well. And and a lot of Black people do go to them, so and even though I'm the only Black member, that walks in the company, but yes, I've had my own experiences, my own views, and my own thoughts about it. But there are some about, and there are good ones. There are good ones. Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm just thinking about sort of like, because for Black people, we are a little bit different and extra sometimes in terms of how we want to pass. And we see all the extra bits and pieces. Do you think that these funeral companies can accommodate? Well, they do accommodate for Black people, obviously, but I kind of want to see a rise in Black funeral directors, in
Yeah.
terms of looking after our own people, in terms of wanting what we want. Because, you go to a funeral in Jamaica, it's a whole big deal. Going
Yeah.
to a setup,
Mm-hmm.
in the funeral, it's a big deal. It's like going to a dance. It's but and over here, I don't know if we've got people to ensure that happens. We ensure it happens, but are the funeral directors ensuring it happens, and do they stand true to what we want in terms of a funeral? And this is the reason why I wanted to interview you yourself, because obviously the funerals that I've been to, it's been white funeral directors that are there.
Yeah.
And I was interested in speaking to you as a Black owned company, and obviously dealing with lots of Black funerals that have obviously happened in this pandemic, because as it stands, a lot of Black people were dying. So
Yes.
you were on the front line watching some of this and seeing all of this, and maybe it's almost like a calling for us to take a look at what we're doing for our community, and looking at all the professions and seeing how we can help our community. And this is one such way.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the thing about it is that I use a white company, and when I do my funerals, they do see white people. Yeah. I think that we should be more together with it, to actually establish something that they have, because it does work, it really does. And they do accommodate. They can accommodate, because don't forget, the funeral actually goes by the families themselves. And I laugh at them, because when I was at the cooperative funeral services, the pallbearers, they were great. They thought, yeah, we've got another Afro-Caribbean funeral. That's all day. Yeah, that's what they used to say. It's all day, and we're going to get curry goat and whatever. They were fed and watered by us, So, and it's a different concept to white people, where they do something completely differently. Their funeral's over within a couple of hours. Well, we are all day, and I'm not joking. We are all day.
And you can't move us from the graveside, right? We've got music, we've got drinks. I've not been to a white funeral, unless it's Irish, by the way, where they have alcohol by the graveside and drinking and this whole hullabaloo that we see also. But I love the celebration of Black culture. I really, really do.
Yes, and I would agree with that, because we do really celebrate the deceased life. Yeah, where some white people just don't. I don't know why, but it feels really morbid when you attend some of their funerals. Where with the Caribbean is very joyful. Like you say, they have music. They have viewings at the church, and gosh, a church can be all 3 hours. Yeah, and we haven't even got to the cemetery yet, or we're racing to get there for cremation. Yeah, so and we as a funeral director have to watch our time. Yeah, we have to hurry up people. So,
yeah. And for Black people, people, that's got to be difficult. But very quickly, before we move on to any other questions, there was 2 questions in the chat that I just don't want to forget. And welcome, Empress Music Live. Thank you very much for joining, and Christos and Sharky DJ, and any of the others that are on this discussion point today. Now, she says, are loved ones allowed to dress the deceased?
Yes, but with assistance.
With assistance, okay. And how long once they get into your funeral homes, are they allowed to dress? Is that before the funeral arrangements happen? I think you mentioned this earlier on.
Yeah, no, it's actually once the funeral arrangement has taken place, because discussion at that point hasn't been made whether they're going to dress to their loved one or not. So, so once they decide that, because the option is given to them, and 9 out of 10 people say yes, they do. Yeah, we will do it mainly most of the time. We don't get many requests to dress them, except for if it's a religion, like Muslims, they do the wash and dress themselves. Yeah, so that we have the facilities in there by doing that, So, but but yes, you can, if you want to dress them, we dress them. It's just that we have to assist you because rigor mortis has set in, even though the embalming tends to make the deceased a little bit more flexible. But we do it because there's a way of doing it, and we will show them how to do it.
Okay. Now, rigor mortis is when rigor mortis sets in, that's when all the bones stiffen and it becomes very difficult to be quite flexible with the body. Do you know what the time span is between someone dying and rigor mortis setting in? I can quickly look it up. I don't know.
It's more or less lucky within an hour.
You're joking.
No.
Rigor mortis. Oh my God, sets in within about an hour.
Yeah. I experienced one of my girl's friends, neighbours, father died and called me over. And by the time I got the company to come out, was within an hour, rigor mortis already set in.
You are absolutely correct. I just looked that up. This is the power of Google and the internet. It says, yes, the time onset is variable, but it's usually considered to appear between 1 to 6, average 2 to 4 hours after death. But yeah, from 1 hour in, rigor mortis can be set in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm learning some facts here today. It's so interesting, honestly. Now, Empress Music Live said, has Cynthia considered working with a Black funeral director, or did I miss that part? I think she missed that part slightly.
Yeah.
You are a Black-owned company.
Empress, I would love somebody to give me the opportunity to do that. I have approached a couple of funeral directors and Black funeral directors, and they're very solely for themselves, where me myself, people want to come in and they've got something to put in it. I don't mean money, I mean time, experience, even experience. And it could be IT, it could be, customer service, it's talking through it. And it's actually arranging it with them. And that is what families do expect. Yeah. It's just, you just don't sit down and say, right, okay, what do you want? Is it cremation or burial? Yeah. You talk to them first and it goes with the flow.
Okay. Right. So let's come on to costs a little bit of funerals. This is where I get a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
Because the costs of funerals are spiraling.
Yeah.
And the average cost of a basic funeral is around £5,000. That's a very basic, get someone in a casket, bury, have a little funeral arrangement, and that's it. And no doubt once you start getting onto the frills like white horses and doves and things like that, we can go into the breakdown of funeral costs. Where's this £5,000 coming from?
With burials, burials is more expensive than cremations. The average cost of cremation is £850, and that's mainly in all crematoriums. Okay, burials is completely different. It depends on the area, the cemetery. Yeah, whether they're government owned, it can be different. And I can give you an example. I don't know, listeners, if you heard of City of London Cemetery, and that is in Wanstead. Okay, it's a huge cemetery. It's been used by so many people, and the reason why is because they're cheaper. Yeah, you go to South London, and you're spending at least £6,000 to £7,000 on a burial plot. You go to North London, you spend at least £5,000 to £6,000 upwards.
So hang on a minute. But yeah, I figured out burial plots when I had someone close to me who family had a burial plot. Now these burial plots you'd think would be cheap, right? Because you're buying a burial plot, your family can all be buried in them, but the costs associated with burial plots can be a lot higher than just normal funerals, right?
Yes, it is. It definitely is. So, what we call that a third party fee, and with the burial plots, they're one of the things that needs to be paid, before the funeral. But what they're doing, they have been doing it for a number of years now, is that I make appointments at the cemeteries when people want a new plot,
Yeah.
and we take them round. We meet the cemetery of one of the cemetery staff, and they will take us round and show them the available spots. Each spot is a different price. So, like City of London, I can't give you the cost off the top of my head, but you've got classic, you've got traditional, you've got lawn grave, you've got the cremation gardens. It goes on, and they're all depending on where they are. The front of the cemetery is more expensive. The back of the cemetery, obviously, is a bit lower than that. But it's just so expensive, and I do emphasize that with people. So that's why I try to find out if people have got existing plots. Yeah, because plots you can have either 2 interments or 3. Yeah. So if they are a blood relative, then I will kind of make that suggestion, and sometimes people don't go for it, but, they go for it until I say to them, well, we can go along and have a look. And then when they realize the cost, then they come back to me and say, oh, no, Cynthia, can we, we will have it in existing plots, so, and the existing plot to reopen, you've got a reopen fee is about £2,000.
Well, that's what I mean. Even to, you've got a plot that you've paid for, and then to go and reopen it, that's another £2,000. I mean, what's the cost of that, as opposed to just saying, I just want to be buried normally without opening up your own private plot that you've got?
With all costs, with a total cost?
Yeah, approximately. If you know.
About £7,000, £8,000 on the lawn grave. Yeah. That's what I was. Yeah, and it depends. Like you say, people have additionals. There is basic additionals where we all do like florals. I do florals, order a service. So, and there's bits and pieces that I can get them to add to it, so it doesn't be, the cost doesn't rise any more than it should. So, and that's where my field of work is finding something that reduces the actual cost. But unfortunately, we have no control over cemeteries and crematoriums. They do want their money up front.
Okay, but as you said, you cater for the disadvantaged, all right, and you ensure to try and get the best price for a funeral that the people can actually afford. Obviously, taking into account the normal costs which you can't take away from, such as the price of a death certificate, the burial plots, casket costs, things like that. But you do source the best price for people within the budgets that they actually have.
Yes.
Now, what if you have no money? What if you, and I know that in terms of burial and paying off debts, it comes from the estate. If you've got a house, it comes from and you sell the house, it comes from the profits after you've paid off all the creditors, your funeral costs come out that, but you have no house, you have no money, you have no family. What happens to you?
It's passed over to the local authorities, and they do a public health funeral. So what they do, the authorities do fund. They have funding for things like this. So what they would do, they would pay the funeral fees, as of the coffin, the hearse, and that's it. And the burial plot is a communal burial plot. Everybody goes in one plot.
So tell us about this communal burial plot exactly. What does that mean that they have a communal burial plot?
They have no relative. They have no relative. Um, they found in a house, and they can't. Yeah, just cannot find anybody. Nobody was taking. No family, living family, or nobody's come forward to represent them. And like you say, they haven't got no assets. So at least they can get some assets. They haven't got anything. That is when they are placed, whether it be a burial or cemetery, depending on the actual borough, what they actually do.
Absolutely understand that. What I actually meant is when you said a communal plot, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're buried with several others, or they're buried by themselves, or?
Yeah. Sorry, Alison. Yes, you're
That's
absolutely
okay, darling.
right. You're completely right. It's buried with, I think it's about 6 at a time. Don't quote me on that, but they are buried with other people in it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's quite
And
sad, really, because when you come across one of the graves and you see the gravestone says unknown, or they just have another name on it, and then they'll have unknown. Some people just don't have an identity.
yeah, I'm just thinking, what if someone has no name? They're charred, for example, and you can't find them by their dental records. I mean, their graves are marked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are they? So when you say that it's a communal grave, are they? Is the grave marked with everybody else's names, or do they have a?
Yes,
Okay, so you'll have a grave with a list of names on there.
yes, yes, you do. Yeah, and they
Wow.
all put in date order so you can see how many people that's in there. And obviously they put unknown and they put a date. Yeah. If they know, if they've got an identity of somebody, they will put their birth date to the date that they've estimated that they passed away.
Okay. And so who makes a decision about whether are all people that have no money buried, or are some cremated? How's the process between burial and cremated for people with no cash?
Well, like I said, it goes to the local authority, and it depended on which authority it is, whether they do the burial or they do the cremation. It depended on what funding they have.
So they make a choice as to whether to bury or cremate them. There's okay,
Yeah.
depending upon the church and the local authority, it will be one or the other.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Well, I mean, if they don't have a background into someone's faith, it doesn't really come into consideration, does it?
Yeah, I mean, we do nominate ministers. We do have a listing of ministers that we can use for different religions, or just a minister that can just give a prayer and so forth. So we do have ministers for that.
Okay.
But we do give them. Well, shall I say the local authority does give them a funeral service. It's quite sad, really.
It is, but what else can you do if they have no living relatives that you can't contact? I think it's nice that they're still given a service as opposed to they're just buried and there's no other thought, which
Mhm.
is actually really, really quite sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it is.
So 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 coming on to funerals and the way that we are buried as well, we've got the options and the costs, including there's these lovely caskets that I see people having that they're buried in or they're cremated in. What's the different types of caskets out there? Because obviously there's a different range. I know that if I was to be burnt, my body's going to medical science. That's an option out there for you people. If you didn't know that, your body can
Mhm,
go to medical science. You don't need to be buried or cremated, and you don't have to get all these costs
mhm.
burdened upon your people. This is just how I feel, by the way. But you've got people opting for wicker baskets now. You've got a varying range of coffins there. I mean, and I'm sure that you've got like super coffins where they're all blinged up and God knows whatever. Do people?
Oh, it is really moved up with the times. I'm not joking. Some of them I have to go, wow.
This is the fun side of funeral
Yeah,
planning, we should
I had
say.
to go,
There's no
oh
fun
my
side.
goodness, that is amazing. So whenever it first started, it was just coffins that was either a wooden or a casket. So you come from a basic, which I normally opt for cremations, okay? And
Yeah.
then you could go higher. If they want something a little bit higher, they can have it in wood veneer, dark woods, and so forth. Everything comes with brass handles. You got the Lord's Supper, which is done with more quality of wood, where the price goes higher, So, and then you go to the caskets, and they start from about £2,500 upwards. And this again, it depending on what religion they have it on there. But what amazes me is that you can actually get personalized coffins.
No
So
way.
it was like, somebody, I'm not really a football person, but if somebody, wanted Tottenham on it, oh, yeah, it's Tottenham all over it. If they wanted the loved ones picture on it, it's got the love. I mean, the roses one is absolutely beautiful. If they're amazing, They're all zinc lines. So they're all airtight. Yeah. So
Sorry, I'm laughing because Empress Lee's written "Pimp My Casket." Maybe there should be a show about this, right? Live show, "Pimp My Casket." See what
yeah,
people do to their actual caskets. Honestly, that that
yeah.
would be a show and a half.
Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah, I quite agree with Empress. Yeah, pick up my casket, because this is what they are doing. This is what they are doing, So, but the designs, you can have anything, guys, anything that you can ever think of, and it's kind of really, it's really nice, but it's very expensive. Very expensive. You're looking at 4,000 upwards for something like that.
Wow. And that's if your casket's going to get buried down in the dirt or burnt. That you're going to pay that money for.
Right. If I can just state to you, I said, caskets are not used for cremations. They are zinc lined. Yeah. So no metal can go into a cremator. So if it's a cremation, they have to be wooden coffins.
Oh, so people pay for a wooden coffin for a cremation, and can they pay for a wicker basket?
Yes, wicker basket we use for cremations, cardboard. But if I just give you a little bit of a joke about this, because
I want cardboard if I'm going. I don't care. I want cardboard.
I remember my father used to say to me, "If you don't get your life in order, you don't do your life insurance, I'm going to bury you in a cardboard box." And I looked at him and I thought, Dad, a cardboard box is more than a wooden coffin. Yeah, so it is more expensive than a wooden coffin. So, yeah, so just bear that in mind, guys. Yeah, we're sometimes we say cardboard box. So, yeah, but yeah, it is expensive, So, but they have all the eco-friendly. Oh, it's amazing, the choices.
I know.
And I can go on and on and on. Yeah.
Well, we have to think about, the world and climate change and everything, and what we're burning and what we're wasting, and so it makes sense to think about that in terms of when we're passing also. But yeah, Empress, I'm gonna have to show that personalized coffins are wicked. Perhaps there's a business in that to personalize.
Yeah, most definitely, Empress. Yeah.
And I could see how that would actually kick off.
Yeah.
So tell us about, I mean, obviously being a funeral director, you have been involved in funeral directing for the old and for the young. Is there a difference to how old people funeral direct as opposed to the young people in terms of how they manage funerals? Or do you think traditions are the same?
With old people, the
older generation.
With the elderly, that they're more traditional. It depends on how old they are. I've done somebody that's been 100, so, and you can imagine what their family's ages are. So they will want something more traditional, you know. So
Yeah.
where the young wants it, you know, out there and live, and you know, and yeah, it's more flamboyant, you know, when it comes to the young people, you know. So it doesn't make a big difference in age because it is the traditional, and then you've got the modern. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And uh, I mean, it's hard because I don't. Young people, I suppose, don't manage a lot of funeral services. It's almost left down to the elder people to manage and sort out and make sure that everything's managed correctly. But I
Mm-hmm.
suppose young people are more thinking about probably like the environment and going for the maybe the more casket friendly coffins and things like that. I mean, I don't know. I seem to think that young people have a different feeling or structure over funerals or not. Do you think?
Well, I think they haven't had much thought about it. Where we actually, I mean, I'd say they didn't have any thought about it, but I think because of what we've just been through, and we still are, that it's been more of the forefront of their minds, you know. So, you know, I know, you know, with my own children and that, and my sister, that they've all got their plans in order, you know, to whatever may happen to them, you know, but I don't think that they have much thought in it as such. When you do speak to them about it, they will listen to you, but I don't think they're taking it that seriously, you know. So even though the death of young people is more is on, well, it's I wouldn't say it's on the rise because it's always been there,
Yeah.
you know, when we've lost a young person, and not all the time is to do with knife and gun crime, but you know, just going on to the children's thought, I just think they just go to attend funerals, and attending funerals for them is just a norm. They don't realise what the cost that's been put into it, you know. So where me being what I do, I've got my family, you know, obviously it extends to yourself and Sharky and Christos and everybody, you know, that I want you guys to all know what time and day it is, and let's think about if the inevitable is to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Because the inevitable is that we are all going to die at some point, and we will all
Mhm.
need some sort of funeral arranging to be sorted out. So I suppose that's what we need to think about. And so, does your company have plans in place or planning in place that can
Yes.
accommodate for saving for a funeral?
Yeah, I do quite a few plans actually. A lot. I find it even more so that I'm doing funeral plans for quite a few people. Even though I have spoken about it, and but I think, like I said to you, like I say now, that it's more at the forefront because, you know, if I said to you about the pandemic, that it was so difficult for thousands and thousands of families that really did not have that kind of money aside. Yeah, so funeral plans are so important. You know, I know I speak about this a lot, into the fact of people looking at the wills. They've got life insurance, not wills, sorry, life insurance, and
Mm,
please go and look at the value of what
your life insurance.
your life insurance and what they're prepared to pay you at the time of death, because it does not match, yeah, what the funeral cost is. The families are still left with a fee, and it could be a good few thousand. And I've experienced it myself. Yeah. So this is why I get people to rethink about things, you know, and go read the small print. Yeah, give them a call, find out what it is, because there is funeral plans in place, and it is done on a monthly basis, and the cost does not rise. It stays at today's prices. Okay, so, and also they do incorporate a burial plan with it. Yeah, so which will be just a little bit more than if it was a cremation, but it is worth it because it's less than what you would pay today. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's a little as, you know, for I think 36 months, I think it's like £11 something a month. So the quicker you want to do it, the quicker it will go. So, but and if you die within the first probably 6-7 years, yeah, and you die then, and you haven't finished paid your funeral plan, it's still covered. It's still covered. So how I look at it, the life insurance is for the additional elements to what like what the family would actually would want. You know what I mean? So, but I've come across this so many times with people, about their life insurance, and they've been hugely disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a big push on pensions recently. People before, when you joined companies, you didn't get automatic pension. Now there's automatic opt-in to make sure that people are actually covered for when they leave work or when they become in a pensionable age, because we're getting a whole load of young people that didn't take out pensions, and we've got a big issue that the government might be paying for a massive pension bill. So they've pushed all different companies to do the same. And I suppose, it's almost like planning for your funeral.
Yes.
You need to plan for your funeral at the end of the day. There's all these things that come into contention, and all these costs that you don't actually think about, or that your family think about. And if you haven't covered the cost of your funeral, that's passed on to the rest of your family, that they have to find fork out £5,000 or £6,000. And although it may sound minimal to some people, it's a lot to others. If you don't have that type of money,
that's absolutely correct,
and to try and find it's a lot. And I think you'll find that people are doing just giving funds and things like that to raise money for the costs of a funeral. And I still don't get, I still don't understand why funerals are so expensive, and this is the basic price of a funeral, which you saw behind me earlier on. I had the statistics up, but it's still a lot of money to die.
Because what they're actually paying for is a third party fee, and the third party fee is more than the actual funeral director's fee, much more. So I just want people to understand that when they are doing it, do expect that there is going to be a bill of a cost of what needs to be paid up front, and then what I do with the rest of it, we work out an installment plan.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we are coming up to the. Can you believe an hour's gone past so quickly?
I know.
Can you believe it? We've been chatting for a whole hour. Now, obviously, just to wind down on what we've been talking about, and I think I spoke about how hard it is dealing with the death and so forth. I mean, have you cried at any occasions when you've been dealing with the deceased? And how hard is it not to cry when you hear about some of the stories of people who have passed? Maybe I should answer the questions that way.
It's not a difficult question, but I'll tell you, I will say to you, I mean, firstly, I'll answer, the last time I cried was not too long ago when TC Cribs took me to the makeshift mortuary in Wanstead. And it was horrific. Yeah, it was absolutely, God knows how long I've been doing it. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at, so, and having to wait for at least an hour for them to actually find the deceased that they got the funeral for, and it just went on. But, I'm sad. And I will cry. I think, it depends on how close it is to me. How close it is to me, that I have to do that initial cry, because it is a loss in my life too. So yes, I would. Yeah, sometimes I would. Yeah, sometimes I would. But there's a lot of times I don't.
You almost become accustomed to it, and we've done some bits and pieces together where I've done some media stuff at funerals, and there was a point where I think we were doing funerals every week, and I'm filming the deceased. I'm filming like this is just a person, and you become almost accustomed to it. It's a bad word, but bad word choice, but you do.
Yeah.
And you film and you think nothing of it.
Yeah.
You know, because you obviously want to do something good for the families, and you're not sitting there thinking, I'm just filming this to be, you know, to be a little bit different, or, you know, some people that like filming these type of things, but you do become accustomed to dealing with the deceased almost. It's weird. It's very weird. And I suppose funeral directors who deal with bodies all day become, you know, you build up that barrier as if to say, you know, you don't see that, you don't feel that. That's
I
not
mean,
to say that you're unfeeling.
yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. It's just you become accustomed to it. And now people say, "How can you get accustomed to seeing bodies, or how can you accustomed to it being death?" You know, I'm human too, and I do have those feelings. But what my focus is on the family. If I'm going to cry, I sit there and have my cry myself. You know, so it was just like when I used to do the conducting, and I'm not joking. I was in and out of City of London Cemetery. God knows how many, probably 6, 7, 8. It could be more once a day. And there was one thing. My mother's buried in there, and even if I wasn't, when I wasn't working, I wouldn't drive past the cemetery and not go in there. And I remember I used to go back and forth, go, "Hi, Mum, it's me again," you know. So you know, but it was just being really stupid. But I could not leave the cemetery until I had to go and visit her, you know. So and it was, you know, I was able to tell my sister and that, you know, what Mum's grave's looking like. Oh my God, we've got to get there on a Sunday to tidy it up and whatever, you know. So, but you know, I have to say I enjoy what I do. And the reason I enjoy it, because I have a passion for it. I'm a very much of a people person. And to see people struggle through this I feel it's my place on earth to make it a little bit easier for them, you know. You know, like I said, I conduct funerals from the phone call to the end of the day. And even sometimes I'm speaking to them afterwards, you know, and then I will see them, and then, you know, so it does go a long way, you know, and everything's got to be attention to detail when it comes to me, you know. I'm a service that has, you know, florals, caterers, people that make cakes, you know, music,
White doves.
you know, so doves. I have doves, you know, so
You do.
yes, I do, you know, so
And by the way, if people didn't know this, I learned this about white doves by being at a funeral with you. So they released the white doves, and the white doves are actually trained to go back to where they came from. So they don't have to go get them. These white doves are released, they fly up in the air, everyone says way, and they fly back home. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Made me want to get some white doves and train them to get sent off.
Yeah, but no, it is great. It is great. There's little sentiments to it that really makes a difference. You know, when you do say, you know, do you fancy something like that? Do you think, they said, or, or they bring something to you and you make a suggestion. And a lot of it I try to create myself, so, and that's what I do. So it's memories matters.
I think so.
Any questions you want to ask, please get in touch with me. Please get in touch with me.
So my last question is that do you talk to them?
Yes, I do.
Do you tell them all your secrets? Because I mean, they're never going to reveal. Do you sit there and you talk about everything? I remember when I went to see my mum in Jamaica when she first passed, and I remember sitting there talking to her for a while. I found it very, very cathartic, by the way. I don't know if perhaps when you're dressing or embalming, you're talking, but you talk to them.
Yes, I do. Especially when I'm putting makeup on them, I go, do you think that's okay? Okay, you look really lovely, so, you look really lovely, so you just have a habit of just doing things like that, so, or when I used to go in chapel, especially when I had this lovely little girl, Sanjay, and I forgot, I think it's Sanjay Lewis, and it's many years ago. She was televised. We had the funeral televised and everything. and she died, and oh, she was so special. And I know I only met her in death, but she she was I had to change her nappy every day. Her mother gave me a nappy to change it every day. And I used to go, "Is that okay, baby?" You know what I mean? It was so touching. It was so touching, but I have bad times in there. Yeah, I had bad times. And, especially if I dealt with people that's got murdered. That's a long process. And the families are just it's so unconsolable. But, I'm in their face. I go visit them every day. Every day. I even have a plate of dinner waiting for me when I get there. So, they're so used to me just to make sure that everything's okay, everything's all right, and keep them updated. And I'm constantly on the phone talking to people, So, that's daunting. That's daunting. Yeah. Small children, stillbirths. I need more than an hour and 7 minutes and 3 seconds. Yeah. So, I can go on and on and on about funerals. So, but I'm passionate about this. I've been doing it too long.
You have. I mean, I've known you over a year now, and I know you've been passionate about this for a long time. And obviously, I've been to a few funerals with you also, and see how you operate. Hence, the reason why I wanted you to come on as one of my expert panelists today on funerals. And thank you so much for joining me, Cynthia. It's been
thank you very much for having me, and thank
pleasure.
You for everybody that's watching. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then.
Well, before we actually let you go, I just, I've got your socials on the back of me, but I'm obviously blind in the social here. Do you want to tell everybody where, they can get in touch with you if they want any funeral planning? Let me just give you a minute or so to tell people about where they can get you.
Yeah, so if you contact me, I'm just updating my website, but it is out there. You can contact me on cynthia.tobia@outlook.com or visit memories-matters-funeral-arranging UENI web, and just send me a message on there. Okay.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah. And also just leave a short message with your number, and I will get in touch with you. As I said, my funeral service is a remote service, to families, okay? So I do everything. I come to your home and I do everything. So please get in touch with me. Any questions, even if it's not what you want, it's something that you thought you needed to ask. Yeah, I'm available. 24/7.
Thank you, Cynthia. And as you know, I'm a big promoter of our Black businesses and for the Black community, hence the reason why I brought Cynthia here. For those of you that have families and friends, please follow Cynthia on her socials. Email her if you have any inquiries. Pass on the details. She's an excellent funeral director. I'm hoping that not too many of our families pass, but in the event that things like this happen, please contact Cynthia from Memories Matters Funeral Services. Again, Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I certainly have. I don't normally speak on these things live, but you know what? This is the time, and and like you say, it's a Black business, and I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, Alison, to be on here, and you will see me about. Yeah,
definitely.
So, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Mr. Press. Thank you, Maria.
Yes, and thank you everybody that has been in the chat. Thank you, Sharka DJ, Empress Lee, thank you, and Shui that stepped in. And for everyone else that's been watching Discussion Point, I will be back soon with another show. Thank you so much. Wave goodbye, Cynthia. We'll say goodbye to everybody.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.